For those that do not remember Hector, the one that received the ire of Linus, if you remember the last post where we went through all the articles or every single mailing list item to get to the point where Linus told Hector that the problem is him. If you don't remember before that, Hector claimed that another guy, I cannot seem to remember his name, he was the anti-Rust guy, and he seemed to be not anti-Rust, which is what he was painted, but anti-Rust in the kernel. He even stated multiple times that all new projects should be started with Rust. He likes Rust, but he doesn't like working in code bases, which are multiple languages, and so therefore he only said, hey, you should not have Rust within the kernel of Linux, but you can have it everywhere else. Just none right here. No, I will say absolutely no, none, not at all. And then Hector got upset, or people were kind of getting upset. And then again, he called the antagonist to the story called Rust like it's like a cancer, going to spread to the whole project. And then Hector said, I think this guy has created a COC violation and should be effectively kicked off the maintainers for comparing something to cancer. And cancer, obviously, saying anything is like cancer, even if it spreads or anything like that, doesn't matter. Just saying that word is a deservedly kick off that. And then he went to social media, did some social media brigading that he even said he did. And then Linus came in and said, hey, I hate social media brigading. And the problem is probably you, talking to Hector. So there you go. That's kind of the backstory in case you didn't see the hour video of me reading every single mailing list thread. And then Hector responds with this. Resigning as, I keep calling it Asahi, but you people are saying it's Asahi Linux project lead. Back in the late 2000s, I was a major contributor to the Wii homebrew scene. At that time, I worked on software, people called them jailbreaks these days, to allow users to run their unofficial apps on the Nintendo Wii. I was passionate about my work. By the way, this is super awesome work. That sounds sweet. I wish I could have run my own app on the Wii. I was passionate about my work and the team I was a part of, Team Tweezers, later FailOverflow. Despite that, I ended up burning out primarily due to very large fraction of entitled users. I can imagine, again, you work in open source. Open source is a place to go to lose your passion because every single time, it's the fundamental problem of all software development. People fundamentally think that whatever they come across, if they don't have explicit experience in, is bound to be easy to fix, and that they don't understand why it's not being fixed. In fact, it's why I'm completely convinced that the raving and the hype over AI is as large as it is because people who fundamentally don't understand how hard software is looks at AI spit out a server that can serve HTML and then goes, oh, that's easy. Software's easy. Why don't you just use AI? It'll be easy. The future's done. No software jobs are going to be even around. I've had people to my face in the last 6 months tell me that it's only 6 months away from people not having jobs anymore due to AI. That time has already elapsed several times to not people on the internet, because people on the internet are fundamentally stupid, but people to my face saying it. And it's just, to me, it's just one of these things where you will get burnt out in open source for the exact same reasons that I think AI is being hyped up. People think things are easy, and even the smallest things can be incredibly difficult. To reverse episode list of numbers at Netflix, it required me bringing in like 6 separate teams, 2-3 different documents, and about 3 months worth of work to get it onto 4 different platforms. It was incredibly difficult, despite the fact that it's literally just reversing episode numbers. That is it. It should be that easy. You start on season 1? No, you're going to start on the latest season. That shouldn't be that hard. It's just reordering. You're just sending it in from the back end, right? It's going to be that easy. It's barely an inconvenience. Nah, that crap is crazy, and it took forever, and it took 100 people to accomplish something that's not hard at all. Why keep playing a cat and mouse game with the manufacturer to keep the platform open, only to see our efforts primarily used by people who just wanted to steal other people's work and very, very loudly felt entitled to it? It got really old after a while. Oh, really? There's people. Is that pirating? Is he saying that? Okay, so hold on. Help me here. Is it saying people were pirating, or that he was calling it stealing because they wanted open access to more open source software? I can't tell which one it was, but if it's pirating, yeah, absolutely. That's crazy. It got really old after a while. As newer game consoles were released, I ended up focusing on Linux ports purely for fun and didn't attempt to build a community nor want to jailbreak exploit that would end up being a tool used by pirates. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, totally on that team. And this is probably the better way to do it anyways, because this is probably a lot more fun. Real talk, probably a lot more fun building stuff for yourself. It's why I generally dislike doing open source, and it's why I don't do a lot of open source anymore at all. I've had such a I do a lot of public source, but I've had such a horrible experience about 8 years ago that I never really want to work in open source ever again. Ugh. It's actually how I got burnt out from programming, and ugh. And by the way, this stream is how I started to get burnt out. I hope you guys know that I started to get unburnt out by doing a stream and building something stupid. That's it. That's the one. Feel strong. Feel strong. When Apple released the M1, I realized that making it run Linux was my dream project. That's a funny dream project. That wasn't my dream project, but that's a fun dream project. The technical challenges were the same as my console homebrew projects of the past. In fact, much bigger. But this time, the platform was already open. There was no need for a jailbreak and no drama and entitled users who want to pirate software mentioned to worry about. And running Linux on an M1 was much bigger deal than running it on a PS4. I launched the Asahi Linux project and received an immense amount of support and donations. Incredibly, I had the support I needed to make the project happen just a few days after my call to action, so I got to work. The first couple years were amazing as we brought the platform from nothing to one of the smoothest Linux experiences you can get on a laptop. Sure, there are and still were some bits and pieces of hardware support missing, but the overall experience rivaled or exceeded what you could get on most x86 laptops, and we built it all from scratch with zero vendor support or documentation. It was an impossible feat, something that had never been done before, and we pulled it off. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. Well, I mean, that's a great story, honestly. Unfortunately, things became less fun after a while. First, there were the issues upstreaming code to the Linux kernel, which I've already spoken at length about, and I won't repeat here. Suffice it to say, being in a position to have upstream code across practically every Linux subsystem, touching all drivers of all categories as well as some common code, is an incredibly frustrating experience. I've literally heard of nobody saying that Linux development is a good experience. I'm friends with several core maintainers or long-term core maintainers of Linux, and every last thing is just like, it's a year's project, it's not a month's project. Every single change is just very, very difficult. Clarification, this has nothing to do with Rust at this point. I assumed not. It's well before R4L was ever merged. Upstreaming to Linux is a terrible experience in C too. Yeah, I assume it's very, very difficult. There's a lot of process. There's a lot of people yelling. And I mean, I guess I'm not sure exactly what the lengths are. I'm sure there's a much better picture that I'm completely missing here. But I can't imagine Linux being an easy experience to commit to under any condition, or if it's even possible. That many eyes, that many people wanting to pull it in so many directions, and that much sensitivity to if anything goes wrong, you're breaking effectively the entire universe. But then it also came from entitled users. This time it wasn't about stealing games, it was about features. When is the Thunderbolt coming? Asahi is useless to me until I can use monitors over USB-C. The battery life sucks compared to Mac OS X or OS. Nobody ever complained when no one ever complained when compared to x86 laptops. Fair. I can't even check my CPU temperature. Yes, I seriously got that one. I can't imagine being that intense about it. Edit. This wasn't just a few instances. I've seen variations on the first 3 posted hundreds of times by now, including takes like Thunderbolt, the DP, Alt are never going to happen. A few times is fine, but the entire thing repeated over and over again every day while trying to make these things happen will get to anyone. And of course, when is M3, M4 support coming? Oof. I mean, to be completely fair, you've also chosen like a terribly complex project with a continuously moving target. I mean, real talk, is there any other expectation? I think the general expectation is like, if you're going to build something like this, people are going to just do this constantly to you. I'm not even sure if there is any other way. And you're also dealing with Linux people that like to distro hop and use fun hardware. They're the arch users of arch users that like Mac. It's crazy. For a long time, well, after we had a stable release, people kept claiming Asahi. Is it Asahi? I'm not really sure. Asahi Linux, and Fedora Asahi Remix in particular were alpha and unstable and not suitable for daily driver, despite thousands of users, myself included, daily driving it and even using it for servers. No matter how much we did, how many impossible feats we pulled off, people always wanted more and more. Meanwhile, donations and pledges kept slowly decreasing. And having done so since the project launch, this is how it always goes also, Like nobody, I know people say they do, but they don't. People don't like long projects doing one thing. Asahi, is that what it is? Asahi? Like they just don't follow stuff after long periods of time. It just always falls off. When I used to do projects that were like months long projects on stream, it would always spike up and then just drop off because nobody, like at some point it's impossible for people to keep up, and they just kind of like, I can't think about it anymore. And then they just stop thinking about it. And that's that. And then they stop touching it, and then they stop thinking, and then all of a sudden it goes away. Yeah. Not enough to spell immediate doom for my dream of working on Asahi. I'm going to call it Asahi. Sorry. I can call it Asahi full time in the short term, but enough to make me wonder if this is, if any of this was really appreciated. The all-time peak monthly donation volume was the very first month or two. It seemed the more things were accomplished, the less support we had. I knew burnout was a very real risk and managed this by limiting my time spent on certain areas, such as kernel upstreaming. This worked reasonably well and most sustainably at the time. Then 2024 happened. I remember that. Crazy year, huh? To 2024. Last year was incredibly tumultuous for me due to personal reasons, which I won't go into detail about. Suffice it to say, I ended up traveling for most of the year, all the while having to handle various abusers and stalkers who harassed and attacked me and my family and continue to do so. That's crazy, by the way. You should just never do that. That's insanity to harass and stalk people. And then even more so, to reach out to people's family members and stuff like that. Like, that's such weird behavior. Like, if you find yourself ever doing that, you must understand you are there is the normal tumultuous parts of life. There's like pits of despair people fall into, and then there's pits of just pure insanity, and you're right here. Like, you're on the other side of whatever comes after that. I don't know what that is, but that is just like, you actually just need help. You need genuine help, and you need to realize you are a danger to yourself and society. Because that is crazy behavior. Actual crazy behavior. And it sounds like it's just over Linux. That's crazy behavior on top of a crazy behavior. We shipped conformant Vulkan drivers and a whole emulation stack for x86-64 games and apps. Gamers, careful. But we still stuck without DP alt mode, a feature which required deep reverse engineering, debugging, and kernel surgery to pull off, of which if it were to be implemented properly and robustly, would require a major refactor of certain kernel subsystems, or perhaps even the introduction of an entirely new subsystem. I slowly started to ramp work up again at the beginning of this year, feeling very stressed out and guilty about having gotten very little work done for the previous year. Full DP alt support was still a ways away. Slow down, Coomers, okay? But we were hoping to ship a limited version that only worked on a specific Type-C port for each machine type in the first month or two of the year. Sven had gotten some progress into the Phi code in December, so I picked up and ended up beating the code of 3 drivers into enough shape that it mostly worked reliably. Even though it wasn't the best approach, it was the most I could manage without having another huge bike shed discussion with the kernel community. I did try to bring the subject up on the mailing list, but it didn't get much response. The issues Rust for Linux has had surviving as an upstream Linux project as well documented, so I won't repeat them in detail here. Suffice it to say, I consider Linus' handling of the integration of Rust into Linux a major failure of leadership. Hot take, I generally agree. 1, I don't think Rust should have ever been upstreamed. The reason being is you already know your audience. It's just not going to work out. 2, I think it's just going to lead to huge amounts of complications that are just going to be just endless bike shedding and arguments over it. And I'm not even saying anything negative or positive about Rust itself. I think you could make the identical argument for Zig, for Go, for JavaScript, for whatever the hell language you want to pick, and you throw it in there. For Carbon, using Carbon or C++ or anything, I'm sure it would just go absolutely insane in the amount of arguments. But I think a second and more important one that I'm not sure if is going to be mentioned here is that if you read through the mailing list, what you'll see is that people are trying to intuit or try to divine how Linus thinks. Rust PRs, they're breaking, C PRs and their breaking should be handled. Like, it doesn't seem like there's a clear strategy at all. It seems like people are just trying to guess what the direction should be. And so some people say that, oh no, you can totally merge even if it does break things on the staging server for Rust bindings. No, you shouldn't be able to merge because of this one situation where Linus rejected a PR because it could merge. Well, then there was this one PR where they didn't reject it even though it did break it, and they totally merged it. And so it's like, which one is it going to be, right? And yes, you're probably most correct, Christoph, right here, which is, by the way, VP of Zig, by the way, probably kind of a catch-22. Damned if he introduces it, damned if he doesn't. You're probably correct, because I'm sure that Linux will increasingly get more and more heat for not being in a memory-safe language. Yeah, I do agree Zig would obviously be much smoother sailing. Zig is much more C-like, all that kind of stuff. But either way, increasing outside pressure and demand for something to be written in Rust. And then on top of it, nobody that probably writes anything to do with the kernel wants Rust in the kernel. And so you have this just massive fight. I'm sure there's some small group of, or some contingent that does, but it does appear that it's not the majority. Or even it's even like a small minority. Simple solution, fork it. I genuinely think that that is the right approach. And why I say that is that I just do not think that you can do what you need to do given the constraints that you have. It's as simple as that. I think you're going to just be completely blocked, and it's just going to lead to endless arguments. Such a large project needs significant support from major stakeholders to survive. While his approach seems to have been to just wait and see, meanwhile, multiple subsystem maintainers downstream of him have done their best to stonewall or hinder the project, issue unacceptable verbal abuse, and generally hurt morale with no consequences. One major Rust for Linux maintainer already resigned a few months ago. Yeah, there's been a lot of arguing. I am curious with this verbal abuse. I assume, is this the calling it cancer? I think this is, if that's what this is referring to, this is like absolutely way overblown language for what's going on. As you know, this is deeply personal to me, as we've made a bet on Rust for Linux for Asahi, not just for fun or just for memory safety either. Rust is an entire reason our GPU driver was able to succeed in the time it did. We have 2 more Rust drivers in our downstream tree now, and the third one on track to be written from C to Rust, because Rust is simply much better suited to the unique challenges we face, and the C driver is becoming unmaintainable. This is, by the way, the same reason the new Nova driver for NVIDIA GPUs is being written in Rust. More modern programming languages are better suited to writing drivers for more modern hardware with the more complexity and novel challenges, unsurprisingly. I wonder the truthfulness of that. I mean, I just assume it's true. Like, my default position is I probably agree with this, but I just don't know why that would be true. I'd have to really consider why that's the case. I mean, like, I totally get that you don't have to worry about a certain class of memory issues when it comes to Rust, but why would that be true? It's probably true if you're really good at Rust. Well, yeah, but I mean, that argument flows, that knife cuts both ways, right? It's probably true if you're really good at C. It's probably true no matter what you're good at. People literally, who is it, Wes Boss, who's writing a JavaScript software for his Roomba? Like, yeah, like there just comes a point where when you're really good at a thing, you just use the thing and you keep on doing that thing, right? Some might, I know, yes, and yes. Also, good point. Contributing your success to Rust is a very interesting approach, I guess, in the sense that, is the language really the successfulness, or is it you, the person who's writing it, who's really, really good at a thing? I would probably argue it's probably the people writing it that are the reason why it's successful, and their choice of Rust, I'm curious how much it actually has to do with the successfulness of it. Maybe just, like, have you ever used certain languages and they just speak to you more than other languages? Like, you can just feel, like, I write a lot of Go recently because I'm just really stupid. And so by me being really stupid, Go just really just works for me. And so it just is very, very nice. I assume he writes C, of course. And so it just feels like it's so easy to write things. Even though I think I prefer Zig overall, I still just like Go because of how easy it is. I know a lot of shitty projects that are written in Rust. Why aren't they successful? Exactly. I know a lot of shitty projects too. I've written some really shitty projects. So I know it has nothing to do with it, right? I know it has nothing to do with that. And so it's kind of funny. I'm curious why that is. Anyways, some might be wondering why we can't just let the Rust situation play out on its own over a longer period of time, perhaps several more years, and simply maintain things downstream until then. Fair question. One reason is that, of course, this situation is hurting developer morale in the present. Another is that our Apple GPU driver is itself major evidence that Rust for Linux is fit for purpose. It was the first big driver to be written from scratch in Rust and brought along with it lots of development in Rust kernel abstractions. Simply not aiming for upstream might be seen as a lack of interest and hurt the chances of survival of the Rust for Linux effort. But there's more. In fact, the Linux kernel development model is, perhaps paradoxically, designed to encourage upstreaming and punish downstreaming forks. While it is possible to just not care about upstream and maintain an outright hard fork, this is not a viable long-term solution. That's how you get vendored Android kernel trees that die off in 2 years. Okay. I'm just curious why. I mean, in the end, I'm just really curious why this isn't it. Why is forking and just saying we're the safe operating system, and slowly, if you can get any company to sign on for research and kind of help fund it, why can't that become the place where in a while this actually becomes the place of where companies start going because they want the memory safety. You start to prove it, right? I don't know. That just seems like that's kind of the bet you'd want to make, and I'm sure that like Google, Amazon, a lot of these places would also jump onto that. But maybe I'm completely. I mean. Also, granted, I could be completely wrong. The Asahi, I'm calling it Asahi at this point, Linux downstream tree is continuously rebased on top of the latest upstream kernel. And that means that every extra patch we carry downstream increases our maintenance workload, sometimes significantly. That seems awful. I've been downstream. I've been a fork and been downstream, and it's a horrible, horrible process. And I recommend nobody do that. And it's just not a fun experience. But it goes deeper than that. Kernel Mesa policies state that upstream Mesa support for GPU driver cannot be merged and enabled until the kernel side is ready for merge. This means that we also have to ship a Mesa fork to users. While our GPU driver is 99% upstreamed into Mesa, it is intentionally hard disabled, and we are not allowed to submit a change that would enable it until the kernel side lands. This, in practice, means that users cannot have GPU acceleration work together with container technologies, such as Docker/Podman, but also include things like Waydroid, since standard container images will ship upstream Mesa builds, which would not be compatible. We have a partial workaround for Flatpak, but all other container systems are out of luck. Due to all of this and more, the difficulty of upstreaming to the Linux kernel is hurting our downstream users today. I don't understand the practical implications of this, but I understand like the theoretical. I guess, I don't know what it means till the kernel side lands. Like, I don't know what kernel side is. Like, what does this mean? This must be the problem that we've been talking about, where it's just like we're writing the Rust bindings, but we don't want to copy the Rust bindings work. I think that's what this is meaning. And Mesa is related to the graphics rendering, yes. It is unfair to try to put the blame on the Linux side when it's Apple, the one that makes things difficult in the first place. This is very true. I know Apple is not making it easy. They're most certainly not trying to make it easy, like at all. Hey, thank you, Flem. Linux is struggling because Microsoft brings simplicity most people can't handle. It's true. It's actually true. I mean, to be completely fair, most people will never use Linux because most people are like my mom. They're not like us. Go throw a football, nerd. I will. Thanks for the tier 1, nerd. All right. I'm not the kind to let injustices go when I see them. So when yet another long-term maintainer abused his position to attempt to hinder R4L and block upstreaming progress. So now we're into the exact situation that I was talking about at the very beginning. I spoke out, and the response, which has been pretty widely covered, was the last drop that put me over the edge. I resigned from my position as an upstreamed maintainer for Apple ARM support, as I no longer want to be involved with that community. Later in the thread, another major maintainer unironically stated, we are the thin blue line, and that nobody cared, which just further confirmed to me that I don't want to have anything to do with them. I don't know what help me, what's a thin blue line? All right, I'll let you in on a secret. The maintainers are not all powerful. We are the thin blue line that is trying to keep the code to be maintained. I thought this was about police. I thought thin blue line was the police, like the difference between absolute chaos in a society and order in a society is effectively the enforcers of the executive branch in a society. Am I incorrect on that? That's where it came from. And typically that is the police. Yes. Okay. I wanted to make sure that I was understanding this. Okay, so what's the problem though? I'm gonna be completely real here. Later in a thread, another major maintainer unironically stated, it'd be weird for him to ironically, we are the thin blue line and nobody cared. Is that a problem? I guess I'm confused by what does that mean? Does anybody know what that means? Is it U.S. politics? Is he saying because is he actually claiming that police are bad? It's the ACAB? Yeah, okay, that group. Hey, no offense, but if you think police are bad, go ahead. Try to live in an area where there's no police or no civil order. Like, trust me, whatever you think are bad about police, which there is definitely things that are bad about police. As somebody who was falsely arrested and thrown into a cop car, it totally sucks. But you know what's much worse? When individuals decide to be their own police force. Like, that's much worse than the other side. That's false. It's not a false dichotomy. If there's no police, then people are the police. Anyone's the police. Then it's really bad. Because then it's just actual force wins. Typically speaking, that's crazy. Like I definitely am not a fan of some police. But that's crazy to think that this is saying that you're the police is somehow like so bad that it's offensive. Like that, to me, this is actually just really, this is just, like, that's behavior that, like, you need to take a moment and just wait and, like, maybe, like, breathe for a while, because that's intense. That's just really intense. But it goes well beyond public incident. In the days that followed, I learned that some members of the kernel and adjacent Linux spaces have been playing a two-faced game with me. Oh, that has to hurt. I would be very sad to find out that, that if you thought people were like friends with you, but behind your back they're not friends with you, I'd feel sad. I'd feel deeply sad. Where they feigned support for me and Asahi Linux while secretly resenting me and rallying resentment behind closed doors. Yeah, I'd quit too then. This to me, again, this to this, like this is crazy. I'd feel that's horrible. All this occurred, by the way, if you do this, you're a pussy. All this occurred without anyone ever sending me any private email or otherwise cluing me into what was going on. I heard that one of these people one who has a high-level position in multiple projects that Asahi Linux must interact with to survive, had sided with and continues to side with individuals who have abused and harassed me directly. Apparently, there were also implied falsehoods, such as the idea that I am employed by someone to work on Asahi. I am not. We have zero corporate sponsorships other than Bunny.net giving us free CDN credits for hosting. Well, that's nice. Hey, good job, Bunny.net. I don't think it's bad. I also think that I really don't like that he has this weird idea that you cannot have corporate sponsorship. I mean, if projects to survive, especially projects of this size, it kind of feels like you kind of need corporate sponsorships. I'm not exactly sure how else you're going to do this. I mean, this is why every single person who does anything that involves working off the support of others has to go and do corporate sponsorships. It's the same reason why I have to do corporate sponsorships. Like, I really appreciate your guys' support. Okay, I genuinely do appreciate your guys' support, but it's just like I couldn't live off of a Twitch income. I'd have to make life changes to make it work out. Multiple life changes. They already did do it with like 3 main contributors, though, Brian. They did it, yeah. I mean, but that, again, I understand that it happened at one point, but projects and things in size grows, and you need more and more and more support. Like at one point when it was just one guy who announced he wants to do this, or 2 guys or 3 guys, then yeah, it works out. But once that becomes a giant group, it becomes exceptionally harder as things keep on going. Like it's not simple, right? I totally understand this, but doing 0 corporate sponsorships, I don't know. I don't wear that as a badge of, honestly, I would actually wear this as a warning more than anything else. I want to see Google. I want to see Amazon. I want to see these companies making this bet, because that means that these companies are betting that this project might be a success and that they're going to want to pivot and host their stuff on this, right? Or he's saying the opposite, which is that he just currently doesn't have any sponsorships. Apple should have been, like, I would have actually been very excited to see Apple invested on this. I'm not sure. Yeah, the reason why I'm reading this as a statement of virtue is due to the mailing list previously, and also this statement right here. It's very hard for me to not see it as that. I get that some people might not like that. Let's see. I get that some people might not have liked my Mastodon posts, which you're free to make, right? I think it's strange behavior for people to get super riled up about this stuff. Yes, I can be abrasive sometimes, and that is a fault I own up to. But this is simply not okay. I cannot work with people who form cliques. I say cliques. Is it cliques or cliques? I started with Cliques, but then I saw so many people call them cliques, and then I was like, I think it's cliques. But then people said cliques. But I've heard so many people, specifically in the math department, call them cliques, and I was very confused by that. Clits? Oh, a fault I find fair. I mean, real talk. Name one group of people that does not form cliques, right? It always happens. At some point, a culture is always created, whether you like it or not. I cannot work with people who place blame on the messenger instead of those who are truly toxic in the community. Also depends on how not all messengers can say things. Not all messages/messengers get their fair reading. I mean, here's a great example. If there is a PR added to your repo and it's just truly trash code, we're talking about just really poorly written, and you said, hey, this code is bad, some people can receive that. Some people cannot receive that. Even though the message is technically correct, sometimes people can't hear it. I saw so. Let's see. This guy has a very high morality, and all others. I'm not sure how he feels. I think he just has a very strong feeling of how things should be, and when people fall outside of that realm, then he's very upset about that. And yes, it does sound like that way, but I'm not. I guess I'd have to know more about that, but it does look a lot like that. I cannot work with those who resent public commentary and claim things are better handled in private, despite the fact that nothing ever seems to change in private. I cannot work with those who denounce calling out misbehavior on social media to thousands of followers, while themselves roasting people on both on social media and on mailing lists with thousands of subscribers. I cannot work with those in high-level positions who use politically charged and discriminatory language in public and face no repercussions. I think it's fine. I think it's completely fine to use. By charged language, again, this is the cancer reference. I just don't understand. I do have this one problem where I do feel like this is kind of a modern problem where people get offended on behalf of other people. So when someone says, "Oh, this is like a cancer to the project," they're like, "Whoa, someone out there just got super offended because they have cancer, been affected by cancer. What you're doing is horrible. You need to be in trouble." You're like, "Well, no, like you can't do that. You can't be proxy outrage, right? I don't like proxy outrage. I don't want a reverse proxy where you gather all the potentially outraged people and you're just the lightning point for it all happening." How I read this is that he really, obviously based on some of the earlier stuff, he's having a really hard outside life situation. And that has to be contributing a lot of downward pressure to all of this, to where this is supposed to be the thing that's about engineering and control. And even the thing that's in like control and engineering and should be about hard facts aren't being about hard facts and control. And so therefore it's just causing the whole thing to destabilize or explode. I cannot work with those who say I'm the problem and everything is going great, while major supporters and maintainers are actively resigning, and I keep receiving messages from all kinds of people saying they won't touch the Linux kernel with a 10-foot pole. I personally would not touch it. You're right. And but I don't think, you have to minimally. What I don't understand is I don't understand, because let me just kind of say the difference or how I see this. Like, this is the major argument being posed. So this is the major argument. This is the crux of the issue right here. Which is that, so this all stems from that Linux kernel mailing list situation, which is that his main argument is that people can say things that he does not like and aren't facing repercussions. But if he goes on social media and says things, then Linus says, no, maybe the problem is with you. And so that's kind of like that's kind of how I'm reading it here, is that he's feeling that he doesn't get the same benefit as other people. Is that about, am I kind of generally, I think, reading that in a fair way? The problem that I have is that the Linux kernel mailing list is a group of people that are specifically interested in Linux, so much so that they're reading patch comments and actively or passively engaging in what is happening directly with the Linux kernel. Social media doesn't work that way. Social media typically works by I mean, one of the many facets you can use on social media is by outrage posting. You post something that is very upsetting, and then everyone piles onto it and gets upset with you. And I don't think that that's a very I don't like that. Like, one I feel like is not an appropriate way to try to muster support. Like, I don't really like that. Mustering maximum outrage is sometimes used as a technique to get your way in a disagreement, which I don't think is a good way, by the way. I don't think there's been a lot of historical times in which outrage and the people who were outraged were wrong. See the comment from Linus replying to the guy about organizing social media mobs. Yes, I did. We did read this. He said, "Have you ever considered that you are the problem? I dislike social media brigading." To kind of sum up what he said. I still think that Linus could easily help quell a lot of this by having a more solid, or at least a corporeal understanding of how Rust and C need to interact together. When Apple released the M1, Linus Torvalds wished it could run Linux, but didn't have much hope it would ever happen. We made it happen, and Linux 5.19 was released from an M2 MacBook Air running Asahi Linux. I had hoped his enthusiasm would translate to some support for our community and help with our upstreaming struggles. Sadly, that never came to pass. In November 2023, I sent him an invitation to discuss the challenges of the Linux or of kernel contributions and maintenance and see how we could help. He never replied. Yes, I do agree that voice would. I do like that. Someone said maybe a voice call would help. Text, so much nuance is lost in text. Totally agree. I guess the best I could argue against this or argue for this is that obviously Linux 5.19 being released from an M2 is super awesome, and it shows that, I mean, it's super cool. I guess the counter argument is, I mean, is this the future of Linux? Or is this one of many possible futures of Linux? Or is this a side quest of Linux? And that's what I guess I don't quite understand, is what is the place Asahi should be? Is it the main quest, side quest, potential main quest? And so it kind of sounds like he views it as the potential main quest, and it kind of sounds like Linus sees it as a side quest. Back in 2011, Calavis left the Linux kernel Linux community, and anathesis. Anesthetist. I've never put the th in there. Oh. Dude, it turns out I can't read. Okay, anyways, back in 2011, Kolavas left the Linux kernel community. An anesthetist by day, he was arguably the last great Linux kernel hobbyist hacker. Yeah, that just sounds hard. In the years since, it seems things have, if anything, only gotten worse. Today, it is practically impossible to survive being a significant Linux maintainer or cross-subsystem contributor if you're not employed to do it by a corporation. Linux started out as a hobbyist project, but it has well and truly lost its hobbyist roots. I mean, is that truly a problem? Is it sad? I mean, any long, large, super big problem, I can't imagine it just being a hobby project. Like, do you want hobby project? Do you want hobby project Linux? I want ass. Okay, well you're on the wrong stream, buddy. I don't know. It feels, I mean, like, I get the sentiment that I think that there was a day and age where this was this way, but also the 2011, the 2010s were the years where we went, oh shit, we can't really improve hardware speed like we used to. Now we got to like figure out how to just do nothing but the craziest optimizations to make things work, and everything just got vastly more complicated. When I started Asahi Linux, I let it take over most of my life. I gave up most of my hobbies. After all, this was my dream hobby, and spent significantly more than full time working on the project. It was fun back then, but it's not fun anymore. I have an M3 Pro in a box, and I haven't even turned it on yet. I dread doing the bring up work. It doesn't feel worth the trouble. Yeah. I miss having free time when I can relax and not worry about features we haven't shipped yet. Honestly, this can really also help just like life in general. I miss making music. Maybe it's a good time to make music. Like, honestly, I think, like, I'm going to be real here. I'm going to say something that I know is going to piss people off. I am so positive people are going to be pissed off. But just kind of feeling through this argument and all this feels like a post. Like, I feel like kids can fix this. And what I mean by that is that I just don't have time or the emotional capacity to care about most things anymore. Since 11 years ago, I had kids, I can't care about things nearly as much. I get hate messages all the time because, hey, I work on the internet. I have all these things. I have people vehemently disagree with me, say horrible things to me. But at the exact same time, I currently have a police thing going on right now that is involved. That's very annoying, by the way. It's super annoying. But nonetheless, with all that to be stated, kids are like a sun. These problems feel like a light bulb. And though a light in a room is light, opening up the windows and having the sunshine in just makes that light seem so tiny. Even for me, after having kids, I don't miss making music as much or going to jam sessions. Even these things, even hobbies. Hobbies have grown strangely dim. How old am I? I'm 38. They've grown very strangely dim because of kids. It's crazy. It's crazy how much of your life just changes due to it. I miss going out for dinner with my friends and family and not having to worry about how much we haven't upstreamed. I miss being able to sit down and play a game or watch a movie without feeling guilty. I'm resigning as lead. By the way, I feel guilty for playing a game, but again, it's because I feel guilty because I'm not playing with my kids instead. Because if I'm going to have free time, even if I'm streaming, even if it's during the day while streaming, it's very difficult for me emotionally to play a game. Because it's like if I played at night, well, me and my wife get 1 hour a day, 45 minutes a day where we get to hang out with no kids. And so it's like, I gotta do that. Yesterday, I played games pretty much half the day, but I played Roblox with my kids, and it was awesome. Oh, someone needs to ban YouTube chat? Okay. What's the problem? Isn't your hobby talking with strangers over the internet? Pretty much, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. That's easy. That's the easy one. Hey, thank you. Yeah. I missed that. I missed that section, and I'm also in top chat. So by missing that, my bad. Yeah, YouTube, typical Jeremy. Not you, Jeremy. Not Twitch Jeremy. Other Jeremy. Yeah, Instaban. Yeah, that's the easy one. That's an easy one. That's the easy kick out. I don't even have to think about that. I'm resigning as lead of Asahi Linux project effective immediately. The project will continue on without me, and I'm working with the rest of the team to handle the transfer of responsibilities and administrative credentials. My personal Patreon will be paused, and those who support me personally are encouraged to transfer their support to Asahi Linux Open Collective. GitHub sponsors does not allow me to unilaterally pause payments, but my sponsors will be notified of this change so they can manually cancel their sponsorships. Oh, that's funny. That's funny that you actually have to tell people to cancel with GitHub payments if you want to cancel them. I want to thank the entire Asahi Linux team, without whom I wouldn't never gotten anywhere alone. You all know who you are. I also give my utmost gratitude to all of my Patreon and GitHub sponsors who made this project a viable reality to begin with. That's awesome, by the way. This is very awesome, people. You should I'm going to give a kind of the inverse preach of it's good for corporate sponsorships. Inverse preach. You should give money to open source, especially the ones you really like. That's it. The ones you use regularly. If you like NeoVim a whole bunch and you use NeoVim regularly, go give to NeoVim. Like, real talk, just do it. Don't be stupid. Okay? NeoVim is keeping up with VS Code on so many different oh, thank you. Hey, thank you, Loki Abu. On so many different ways. And it's competing against something that's backed by Microsoft with 30 plus employees versus a handful of people that do it in their spare time. Yeah, so if you use Asahi, you should support them. You should do it. If you use one of these bespoke flavors of Linux, just know what they're going up against. Because I'm sure, excluding some of what I think is just like not just totally the wrong thing to focus on. Excluding that, I am positive a lot of these troubles that he's talking about, especially with just working with other kernel maintainers, kind of the inside team versus the outside team. I get that. It totally makes sense, and it's probably really, really hard and emotionally super draining. When I went to California, as a person who grew up in Montana, going to California, you know how many people just instantaneously think you're stupid? You know how many people instantaneously look down on you if you're not from some prestigious school? Like, I get the inside cliques. They're very, very, very annoying. Right? They're just genuinely pretentious. So it's the worst. You know what's even worse? If you have a Southern accent and you live in the Bay, you are just having a horrible time. You are having a horrible time if you have a Southern accent. Because people truly, and this is not even just in the Bay, this is in pretty much any city. New York's, any of these bigger cities, dude, it's just horrible. Absolutely horrible how much they look down on people with a Southern accent. All right, I want to thank the entire Asahi Linux team. Oh yeah, we already read that. If you're interested in hiring me or know someone who might be, please get in touch. Remote positions only, please, and consulting or flexible time on non-exclusive basis. Contact right here. Boom. Update. A lot of discussion around this post and the interactions that led to it brings up the term brigading. Please read this excellent Fedi post for the discussion of what it is and isn't brigading. What is? I don't know what Fedi is. Is that Fediverse? Oh, okay. It's okay. This is on the same line. Okay, I guess I don't know what brigading means, so maybe I need to be corrected on what the term means. As long-standing open source contributor in various capacities and maintainers, I have a bunch of thoughts on the Rust for Linux Asahi developments. Humans are going to complain, and in a world with social media, to do so on social media about public and persistent frustrations in their lives. Not super useful to ask them not to do that. Okay, well, technically, he didn't ask him to do that. He said he just doesn't like it. Brigading is a big deal and not a term that should be used lightly. It specifically means intentionally creating and coordinated group. Let's see. It specifically means intentionally creating a coordinated group harassment campaign. Don't call stuff brigading without clear evidence of intent. People who are intentionally brigading people are actively engaged in organizing and serious harassment. Okay, so if that's what social media brigading means, then yeah, I'm on their team. You shouldn't do that. That's awful. That's crazy, by the way. That stuff is crazy how much people go out after other people. Well, I think at the end of the day, I feel bad for Hector. I think he's in a tough time. He's obviously a super talented engineer who's very incredible at what he does. And so I just genuinely feel bad for just going through it all. And I'm sure it really sucks to work against people, right? Like, how much time does he spend working against people who are on the Linux kernel, whatever part they're working in? Like, that has to be just so frustrating if you're attempting to make Rust work in the Linux area. So it just feels very, very, very difficult, and I have to feel sad for the guy. I'm sure it's completely frustrating, and I'm not shocked at all the experience of burnout. I would have been burnt out well before him, right? So not only is he probably a significantly better engineer than I have ever been, he is also way more dedicated to building things and seeing things through. Probably pretty dang good. Yes, at OSS is not easy. It is not easy, and it's not nice, and it's not kind. Anyways, it was good to read, though. Hector live streamed his initial work on Asahi Linux, Bring Up a few years ago, and it was amazing. He's an incredible engineer and highly recommend watching the VODs because I learned a lot from him. That's super cool. That's super, super cool. Yeah, I could imagine this would be very disappointing. I could imagine this would be super, super disappointing, feeling like going from Linus being pumped up about running Linux on a Mac to then follow up being very disappointed about how he communicated later on. Yeah. Linux has to die. We need a new Linux. I don't really agree with that. Anyways, he's done good work. So the name is the Primogen.